I think of myself as a fairly unbiased writer, but it is my love letter to the Cuban Revolution. And I'm really glad that I was able to do it with Noam because he shares this sentiment with me. He too wanted to write a love letter to the Cuban Revolution.
Now, before we just get into the specifics of the book itself, I kind of wanted to could you maybe give us like an introduction to your personal relationship with Cuba? Like in one sense, as a topic of study. I know that you actually mentioned in the creation of this book, you mentioned your experiences on the ground, which obviously is alluding to like visits you've made to the island. Can you just kind of give like what kind of motivated you to investigate the subject to this degree that you're writing, being able to write books about it?
Well, firstly, I would say, I was born in 1967, which is when the Cuban Revolution was 8 years old. So, okay, it's 8 years older than me, but I think of it as a contemporary. I
Mm,
think of the Cuban Revolution and myself as old friends.
mhm.
When I was growing up in Calcutta, in India, the war on Vietnam was on, pretty fierce. I was about 8 years old when it ended, and you may not have a good sense of this, but Calcutta, India was a key part of the US intelligence network that operated in Asia around the Cuban War. I mean, it's important to know that the consulate, the government, the left government in Bengal renamed the street where the consulate was Ho Chi Minh Sarani. So, the relationship between Cuba and Venezuela and so on was very deep. Ho Chi Minh had a great respect for Fidel Castro, the Cuban Revolution. All of that has been in the water I've been drinking since I was a young boy. We've been old friends, the Cuban Revolution and I. And because I have some family members in the left, I'd heard about Fidel, but of course knew about Che Guevara before anything because of the posters. I recently was at the Feltrinelli Foundation in Milan, Italy, and it was Feltrinelli who first made that poster from the Corda photograph and made it very popular. That this is an Italian publisher. I don't. We didn't have that poster in our house, but pictures of Che Guevara were very common, and so I knew about the Cuban Revolution. I first visited Cuba in the 1990s. In 1992, during the special period, the political party with which I'm closely affiliated decided in the special period to go among the Indian peasants and workers and collectively raise 10,000 tons of wheat and 10,000 tons of rice. This was then brought to the port of Calcutta and put on a ship, Princess of India, taken to Havana, and the General Secretary of the Communist Party, Harkrishan Singh Surjit, and his the close associate, Comrade M.A. Baby, went to Havana to deliver this rice and wheat. And Fidel Castro said to the people of Cuba that for 1 week we will be eating the bread of India. I participated in collecting a very small amount of that wheat in the state of Punjab, where I was doing my PhD research at the time. But then a few years later went to Cuba and was very interested in seeing a couple of things. One, the immense impact of literacy on the island. Everybody seemed to read and write. There were libraries everywhere, small, some of them in not great shape, but they were everywhere. Clinics, medical clinics in every little town and village. That really, excited me, the possibility of that. Because in a country like India, literacy rates are still struggling.
Mhm.
Healthcare is not there in
Mhm.
small towns and villages and so on. To see the Cubans having succeeded despite the blockade was something quite exciting. And I think I tried the other day to calculate it. I don't know. I must have. If I've been to Cuba less than 20 times, I would be surprised. If I've been more than 20 times, I think that sounds accurate. And many of those times traveled around the island to Santa
Mhm.
Clara, to the Bay of Pigs, and so on, and experienced, the basic, generosity of the people, but also the struggles that they undergo today. I'm not a I'm not an idiot. I know that the blockade has had an immense negative impact on the people's lives, on the possibility of the Cuban Revolution. I went there during the pandemic, saw how they built the vaccines and so on. It's an impressive experiment. So for me, as I say, we've been friends for my entire life, and now I'm really happy that with on Cuba, it's in a way, and I don't mind saying it. I don't have any problem saying it. I think of myself as a fairly unbiased writer, but it is my love letter to the Cuban Revolution. And I'm really glad that I was able to do it with Noam because he shares this sentiment with me. He too wanted to write a love letter to the Cuban Revolution.
It's amazing. And just to kind of like build off that, you actually met with Fidel in 2001. Is that correct? And if so, can you just like describe like because now like just thinking about that now, it seems like such a larger than life figure that you actually had the opportunity to meet and speak with. Can you just describe what that was like?
Yeah, in fact, I met him a couple of times, not just
Okay.
once. But in 2001, it was at the World Conference Against Racism in Durban. I was very fortunate to be invited by the United Nations University, by Mary Robinson, the former president of Ireland at the time, was in charge of building a kind of intellectual, conference on the side of the big World Conference on Racism. And there, Fidel Castro spoke at both the NGO session and at the official session. And because I was invited by Mary Robinson, a high official of the UN, I got passes to go to both. And I saw that at both meetings, Fidel got a standing ovation, the only leader to get a standing ovation by the world's representatives and in the NGO session. It was pretty incredible. And I got to meet and speak with him. It's interesting. Fidel spoke English pretty fluently, but he never spoke it in public. But he spoke to me in English. I went and sat and talked to him. He was very interested in the debate in India around caste and race. That's what he wanted to talk about. It was extremely voracious appetite for analysis and information. But I've seen him subsequent to that. In the last few times I saw him, he was very worried about health because he himself was not in great shape. He was telling me, "Don't smoke anymore. Drink moringa tea." He's a very kind and generous man, but also incredibly voracious appetite for knowledge and wanted to know things, everything. So yeah, you're right. Larger than life. It's impossible not to use that, even though, of course, it's a cliche, but it's true. Cliches are true sometimes. He was
Yeah.
larger than life. And also, he was an extremely compassionate person, sensitive person. He wasn't like the big dog in the room, okay,
Right.
that you might imagine. I mean, he asked about people. It's a very nice man. So
Nice.
yeah, I mean, there's that. A very very nice man. And I must say, I know the current president of Cuba very well,
Mhm.
Miguel Diaz-Canal, and also extremely humble man. He's the first Cuban leader, I think even before the revolution, to wear blue jeans and ride a bicycle. He used to be a mayor of a small town. He would walk around everywhere. And by the way, because Miguel Diaz Canal and some of his friends are about my age, um, these are also people who, when they're home, they put rock and roll on. And Abel Prieto used to be the Minister of Culture. There's a bar, a nightclub in Havana called Yellow Submarine, which is, where a lot of young Cuban rock and rollers and rappers come to perform. Right next to, just 5-minute walk from the bar, is a statue. There's a bench,
Up to
park
Lennon.
bench,
Mhm.
and sitting on the park bench is John Lennon. And Abel Prieto used to be the Minister of Culture, a close friend of the president. He and I went to the Yellow Submarine one evening and then strolled down to the park bench and took a photograph, the three of us, and we posted it online and said we are the original Marxist
This Leninist.
Lenonists.
Also, rest in peace to Gary Floyd of the Dicks and the Big Boys.
Ah, well, so you are you the dicks. My
Yes.
God, that's. Did Gary Floyd die recently?
Yeah, he passed away. I think what about like a month or so ago.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Very important band in the history of punk
that's
rock
right.
music. Yeah, very important band. Also an anti-imperialist band.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It's very important to point out. You know, on Spotify, I have a list called Yankee Go Home, which is basically mostly punk rock, anti-imperialist punk rock music, mostly. And I think I have a
Mostly.
couple of Dick songs in there.
You got your problematic faves in there too, I guess.
I think so, yeah. Um,
Okay.
Scooping us up like ants in a colony. Organize the wealth into a socialist economy.